We've been talking a lot about AI. Unfortunately, who hasn't? Mostly Copilot, but GPTs and Copilot Studios and agents and automation and all that good stuff. And a lot of it, when we've been discussing nonprofits, has been about getting started, how to get those small programs going, and anybody that's at that stage and is interested, fully recommend you jump on our YouTube channel, search Formers Pro, and there is a whole host of me and Steve talking there about smaller agents. And we did a great one last month about we actually built 4 AI agents live, which was really interesting to see the fact that you could just get in natural language 4 agents out in an hour. It's not the end goal, though. It's just the start. So today we are going to be talking about actually scaling your AI. So I'm assuming everybody on this call has dabbled and is now wondering, right, well, what's next? How do I actually make this an integral part of my sort of nonprofit? How do I actually get the real world benefit from this? This is hopefully, he touches wood quite quickly, what we're going to be talking about today. So my name is James. I'm the head of marketing here at Formers Pro, and my lovely colleague Steve will also be speaking.
Hi all, I'm Steve. I'm a business development manager for the not-for-profit sector at Formers Pro.
So he's the guy to speak to if you are interested in scaling. So who are Formers Pro and why are you listening to us? Well, hopefully you've been on a bunch of our other webinars and already know that. Just in case, we were founded back in 2012 with a specific mission, and that's because our founder Glenn wasn't really very happy about how non-profits were being treated by the wider Microsoft network. A lot of non-profits were treated like commercial clients, and that's not good for the non-profit or, to be honest, the consultancy. So we were deliberately founded to service the non-profit sector. We've obviously been going for a lot longer now, but 50% of our client base is still the non-profit sector, always will be. Our very first non-profit client is still with us, Anthony Nolan. I'm proud to have been working with them for the last, what is it now, 13, going to be 14 years next year. It's never going to change. So what do we do? Which is always a quick question. A bit of everything. Enterprise development. We do a lot of data and AI, which is why we're talking about this. We can help with the consultancy. We do a lot of project rescues. We've always found a lot of non-profits actually sort of get sold on the Microsoft dream, but then have it implemented wrong. And if you're in that boat, please get in touch with us. We do tech support, software training. We can actually do a free system health check, which is one of the things that, Steve, I believe you get involved in a lot.
Yeah, that's just where we go in and have a look at what's been built and basically based on what we think and Microsoft best practices, if it's been built well, scalable for the future, flexible enough for you to maintain internally, that sort of thing, because there's a lot of over-customized systems out there where there's a lot of low-code, no-code potential nowadays.
We also don't like to just do once and done projects. Big fan of continuous improvement. So we will build you minimum viable product, get you the project done, get it sort of generating ROI for you instantly, and then improve it. And it's not just us talking. As you can see, we've got a lot of non-profit clients there. Steve, if you want to call out some of your favourites, putting you on the spot.
I wouldn't use the word favourites, but certainly some notable ones.
Not publicly, anyway.
The Duke of Edinburgh Award is actually a fantastic example there because they're really far ahead with AI to the point where they've locked down their own internal AI model, trained on all their data, all secure. You've got the likes of Rethink Mental Illness there who support a lot of, even people with mental challenges, but also homeless people, and have to use AI to bring those services together. So there's a lot of different types of not-for-profits that we work with, but many of the challenges and the aspirations are very similar, and there's a lot of lessons learned from the projects that we've done that we can hopefully help a lot of you with as well.
It's always the difficulty with the non-profit sector. It's every single one of our clients has an amazing story. Little Princess Trust, obviously helping children with cancer with wigs and alopecia, and the Holocaust Museum. They've all got their own story, and it's one of the reasons our staff love working with non-profits. But moving on, because you're not here to talk about Formers Pro, you're here to talk about AI. Before I do just dive in, we just want to say a quick thank you to Microsoft Elevate, which you may have known from the start of the year as the TSI team. So part of Microsoft Philanthropy, they've recently rebranded with the mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. I've clearly had these slides from our American cousins, as you can see from all the Zs in them. The rebrand now focuses on the non-profit sector, but where that was previously exclusive, they're now working with K-12 and under children, and that's basically any child that's not in higher education, so sixth form and below, which sounds odd to start with, but when you start thinking about it, it actually fits perfectly with the non-profit sector, because everything they do is with the mission to answer this question, which is, are they building machines to replace people or to help people thrive? And actually involving the education sector within the non-profit sector just massively sort of like forwards that goal, bringing the power of AI to social and impact organizations everywhere. We'll be sending all these slides out, so I won't go through every single one, but just to say that Elevate has a huge commitment to the non-profit sector, 4 billion global donation commitment. In fact, 20 million AI credentials is what they're aiming for by 2027, and they give a lot of money away each year because they're part of the philanthropy team arm of Microsoft. They're actually a non-profit themselves and don't make any money. Everything they do goes back into the sector, either in terms of direct contributions or discounts on their profit on their products. And Steve, I know you've got a lot of commercial clients that would give their right arm to access non-profit licensing discounts, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, up to 75% it says there on a lot of them. But yeah, it's the difference is you can get a lot of users licensed for a system that would rival a really cash-rich commercial organization.
And my apologies, everyone. I'm just flicking through these slides. Can I just get a quick thumbs up to make sure you can all see them? I probably should have asked that at the beginning, so I apologize, but just making sure everyone can see. It's so brilliant. Okay, so let's actually get started. Why are you all here? Let's frame today from a slightly different angle. We're at this really weird, but I find fascinating moment where AI is massively, completely ridiculously overhyped. If you read some of the reports, you'd think you're going to get a Wally sort of like feeding you your meals tomorrow, and it's not there at all. But and Steve and I will be the first to tell you this, it's also massively underused. And that's an odd situation. So a lot of nonprofit leaders that we speak to, they've seen the headlines, their staff have seen the demos, and everyone's sort of going, yeah, I kind of see it. This could be transformative. If somebody could actually just tell us what to do. And the truth that I found personally from speaking to people is that most organizations, they're not struggling with the AI itself. We've all used ChatGPT. We've all used Copilot as a chat. We can all use it to write our emails now. It's the human layer they're struggling with, the confidence, the testing, the expectations, that what's next, that use case. I've got it as a chatbot. That's absolutely fantastic. I can brainstorm with it, but how does this actually make my job easier now?
Yeah, I'm having a lot of conversations around this sort of subject at the moment with charities because people are really excited about AI and obviously skeptical in pockets as well, but generally unsure where to start and scale in earnest. So yeah, good stuff's happening, but it's just not necessarily spreading. And obviously leadership want structure and governance before they commit to bigger steps. So I think what organizations really want at the moment is a way to move forward without feeling that they're jumping into something chaotic.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to come at it from a marketing angle rather than a technological angle, because once you start speaking to one of our developers, because I'm sure everyone on this call is going to end up working with Forms Pro in the next month or two, otherwise you're going to make Steve cry, and nobody wants to make Steve cry, do you? I tend to look at this from a human perspective because I am the least techie person in the company, so I kind of have to just to be useful. But technology doesn't scale when the technology gets good. Technology scales because it feels safe, useful, and normal to real people. So if AI feels complicated, people are going to use it. If AI remains a black box with no use cases, people are going to avoid it. If it feels risky, leaders are just going to go, no, moving on. And if it feels poorly governed, it's just going to get shut down. And that's part of what we do under our consultancy arm. We're here to help you with those use cases and remove that anxiety. From our point of view, and it's why we ran the nonprofit session last month about building use cases, and some of them were fantastic. There was sentiment analysis, there was answering emails in your inbox before you actually even opened them, and happy to talk about those after the call. But if we can provide that sense of clarity, that sense of, and I think the word I'm looking here for is control, plus a few early wins and instant ROI, that's where you really start seeing AI scale.
And that today is what we want to do, give you a clear sense of how to actually make these things happen. There's a lot of theory always bounded around, and obviously theory is necessary a bit, but we want to actually go into some of the practical steps that you can take to maybe overcome some paralysis in decision making, or just understand how to take the first step or the next step of something you've already started and turning it to something kind of consistent across the organization.
Yeah, so, and fingers crossed here, and I'll tap wood again. By the end of this hour, our hope is that you're going to leave with a clearer picture of two things. And if you don't, you can shout at me at the end of the call. First, what responsible scaling should look like in the real world and your organization. That was a weirdly structured sentence implying that your organization isn't in the real world. And second, what your next step should be without feeling like you're leaping into the unknown, practically sort of stepping forward. So, the reality, where are you all right now? Now, you're going to know this question much better than us. So I don't mean to put sort of like, words in your mouths at all, but me and Steve do speak to a lot of non-profits. And what I, at least, and Steve, I'm not going to put words in your mouth either, but I find that I keep seeing the same pattern again and again and again. And it isn't about the technology at all. It's about the behavior of non-profits. There's a lot of pilots going on, and they flourish because they feel safe. There's no risk here. We can just dabble, and dabbling is the great world. Small, they're contained, they're low risk. They're almost a little sandbox that isn't going to affect anything. Problem is, though, if they're not going to affect anything, why are you even bothering? Scaling isn't going to happen until stuff stops feeling playful and fun and actually starts having consequences, both good and bad. Scaling does involve a little bit of risk, but the trick is to mitigate that risk and aim for the benefits.
And that sort of example of doing things in isolation is something that we're seeing a lot at the moment. Organizations will have one or two really good pilots going on. They've established really solid use cases that are very doable for a first foray into AI, usually powered by a couple of enthusiastic business champions, super users. But when everything sits in isolation like that, it's great, but you can't build an organization-wide approach on obviously just their enthusiasm. But then these are the people whose enthusiasm you use to make it a more governed project and help them kind of help you structure it. But yeah, you've got to keep the momentum up and have a plan and have some next steps once you've started to see success.
Yeah, there is actually, and it feels funny because for the last few months we've been encouraging everyone to start the pilots, and if you haven't started, please start. The problem with them when you talk about scaling is you don't need any governance with a controlled experiment. You don't need cross-team adoption, or you don't need your data in the right format and shape. You're working in a bubble. And people are really good, I found, at working around local workarounds. It makes them feel innovative. But those workarounds fall apart the second you try to start scaling. So we now need to move everyone away from those projects and those workarounds and actually embed these in in a culture of AI first.
That's it, and that's where a lot of organizations hit the wall, because they've got really good bits of activity, but then no shared approach or no common definition of like what good AI looks like, or what the best use cases for AI and what's it not so good at. I had it recently, something I've been using AI for quite a long time. Luckily, I fact check everything that I get response-wise from AI, but I've kind of recently figured out that actually it's not as good as I thought it was for that particular thing. So I can imagine there's a lot of people in all your organizations kind of using LLMs for great stuff, but perhaps if they just collaborated with other team members, they'd realize that actually maybe doing something slightly different would get them better results, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and again, sort of bringing this back to the real world, the people that we speak to, the decision makers within the non-profits that we see, we know they can see the potential because they tell us they've run the pilots, they've approved them, and the pilots are usually fantastic. But there's always the but question, because they can see the fragility, they can see the danger. They know if they try to scale too fast without those right foundations, they're just exposing themselves to too much risk. So everyone we spoke to, or at least a lot of the people, I'm being too definitive in my language here, but the people that we have spoke to, a lot of them are stuck in this weird middle ground of excited but hesitant.
Yeah, and that's like momentum is important and exists in a lot of places, but it is uneven in many. Like you've got spark after spark, but none of them are lighting the fire, and that's the gap that you want to help close, and just like know what momentum you can operate at, and what pace feels both safe and fun and successful. You've got to bring it all together.
Absolutely. So why are we talking about AI so much this year? I mean, this is going to be a quick slide. What's changed this year? Well, AI. I mean, it's been a huge shift over the last 12 months. It was released back in, I want to say, OpenAI November 2022. God, was it only 3 years ago? It feels like it's been with us forever. But Copilot, especially this year, Microsoft's LLM tool, has gone from being this shiny new toy that people were kind of going, not sure about that, Microsoft, to something that actually really should be part of your daily workload now. And those expectations are so high, and people are seeing, they're saying, look, I can see what's possible. Why isn't this everywhere? And actually, rather than sort of talking about it from leader down, it's actually creating an upward pressure from the bottom levels of your organization going, why am I still doing this manual thing? Why haven't you approved an AI for it?
Exactly that. What we're seeing is a lot of staff and volunteers are already using AI and have been for a long time. Their own personal tools in many cases. And for things that I actually think are fantastic initial use cases, things that aren't external facing but will save time and generate return on investment, things like drafting emails and turning notes into reports and summarizing meetings. And none of that is coming from a formal rollout, which is amazing. But then governance tries to catch up, realizes everyone's already moved ahead.
Yeah, and I think sometimes at a certain senior level, you forget that your staff don't ask for permission for stuff. They'll occasionally ask for forgiveness, but it's rare that they'll ask for permission. Your volunteers definitely won't, because you're not even paying them. They just want their job to be easier. They want their day-to-day to be easier, and they want to accelerate the mission. Nobody's working at a non-profit because they want to be a millionaire. I mean, it's the same reason everyone used WhatsApp at work before, well, I was going to say before organizations had policies about WhatsApp, but before even WhatsApp had WhatsApp for Business, it was just because the value was immediate. And I think it's a good it's a good sort of comparison, because AI is now in that same phase. The emotional incentive is almost outweighing organizational readiness. People are using it, but organizations aren't scaling and catching up.
And I think that's the behavioral difference in like an AI rollout than a typical like CRM system or donor management system, for example. People can start using AI straight away because it's there, the functionality is there. Whereas you build a CRM system over X amount of time, and you don't want your users using it till it's ready, because they'll it'll break and you find a load of bugs and the users won't be happy. But that's, I think, just people aren't going to wait for permission with this stuff. Some people are, but others will be quite interested in AI in their personal lives and think like it's a massive hindrance me not using it. Just because others perhaps aren't as knowledgeable about it as I am as a user doesn't mean I'm not going to then use it as a blanket policy. So it's happening. And again, these are the people that actually could be your champions and the people to help you structure the governance and the future plans.
I mean, is there anybody on the call directly responsible for sort of governance? Is that sort of just, I mean, even if it's an organisation wide and you're only doing some of it, but does it affect any of your roles? Quick sort of thumbs up if it does, or a wave. Yeah, so we've got a couple appearing in the comments now, but governance, culture, data, I don't want to call it the boring stuff, because actually I have to do a lot of governance and some of it I find quite fascinating, but it is the important stuff. And it's hard to keep pace with stuff that's changing so fast, which is why the key message is, the technology has leapt forward, but people have leapt forward even further. And Microsoft is a great example, released something called the Power Platform sort of 10, 12 years ago. And they went, great, we've built this great big thing. Now tell us what the use cases are for it. And the Power Platform is great these days. AI is kind of at the same stage. It's right, here's this great big LLM. Please now tell us what it can do. Which makes governance problems when you're watching your people. But is a question that needs answering when you're looking to scale, right?
That's it. But it puts the leaders in a tricky spot, obviously, because the board's asking for some direction and staff and volunteers want clarity, and teams are producing, this is a big one, producing AI-generated work, but no one's quite sure how to assess or improve it. So governance goes from being a nice to have to something you suddenly needed yesterday.
Where are the gaps? Obviously, governance is a big one. But when we speak to people where they are with AI, most are sort of going, oh, yeah, we've got the pilots, we've got this, we've got that. And as I sort of said, the pilots are deceptive. They do give you a sense of genuine progress, but the pilots won't ever really reveal those gaps to you. That's the kind of thing that creeps up on you when you try to scale if you're not careful. And it's why, look, if you don't end up speaking to us about the gaps, please reach out and speak to somebody else, because they can trip you up quite badly. The pilots have created something that, if any of you are into economics at all, is called local optimism. It's confidence in a very small pocket, but uncertainty everywhere else. And the danger with local optimism is when those small pockets drag everyone forward without a clear structure and plan.
That's it. We're seeing it quite a lot where in a charity you'll have one team doing amazing things with AI, usually because one or two people in that team are those kind of have taken an interest into it in their lives in general. But the moment you look outside that bubble, there's no structure or shared approach. So no way for other teams to pick up the good work that team has been doing without starting from scratch. One of the core things that we do on a lot of our system implementations is delivering a project in phases. So if you've got like a new CRM coming in and it's affecting fundraising and marketing and events, you don't do it all at once and change all the ways of working at once. But when you do the most crucial bit first, you take all the foundations of that. So then you don't have to spend all that time building the foundations and the kind of back end infrastructure in the next phase when you add the next module. So AI will be very similar, and it will then potentially feed into your policies and the way that it answers you as well, because the more you use it, the more you can refine it and standardize the approach, and everyone can then benefit from the work that other people have done.
Yeah, and that's pilots done right. That's implementation done right. Currently, a lot of the gaps with nonprofits just doing this themselves, their pilots don't require any kind of maturity or governance. All it needs is the enthusiasm. But scaling, as Steve has pointed out, requires that shared understanding. Okay, what's allowed, what's safe, what's good, data do we trust, how are we going to measure success? Because actually, if you don't agree ahead of time how you measure success, well, how do you this is saved X amount of time, but it costs X amount to implement. Unless you know what X is, how do you measure it? And without those shared pieces, that shared understanding, you end up with a brilliant one-off win that, as Steve says, can never ever be replicated again.
Yeah, and that is the point at where I'm seeing a lot of teams start to drift apart. Is obviously the power users who are miles ahead, but then others who are unsure, are often overwhelmed, often afraid that they still have misconceptions that AI will take their job rather than make their job easier and get rid of the boring bits, which I think many of us have kind of realised now is the biggest benefit of AI in many ways. But yeah, that gap just gets bigger the longer you leave it, and often that gap is unseen as well.
Yeah, it's also where a lot of organizations, I keep saying trip up, but it actually becomes a danger. Bringing this back to your people are protective. So if you've got a volunteer or if you've got a member of staff who's found this great workaround from a pilot AI scheme that they've run that's doing a thing, doesn't really matter what it is at the moment, and then you come in and say, actually, that's not great governance, so let's not do that anymore. They're not going to stop. They're just going to stop talking to you about it. Nobody wants to go, okay, I'll go back to the old way of doing things much slower. Your AI champions don't want to slow down, but it is going to make them feel intimidated and defensive. And they're either then going to go elsewhere where they feel safer to continue, or they're just going to lie about it. And you suddenly have this big, scary shadow IT where you don't know what's going on, and governance becomes scary because there's stuff happening just behind the scenes.
That presents the issue that the momentum is there, but it's just not connected. And when things aren't connected, they don't scale. And that's not necessarily scaling in terms of getting more functionality out of the tool. It's also how in line with best practices do your people use these tools? How much is everyone collaborating with each other and sharing information and advancing everyone else's use of it? So scaling is great on an individual or a team level as a pilot, of course, but then take the advantages of that and standardize it and formalize it across multiple groups, and then properly scale it in the truest sense of the word.
So what does scaling actually look like on a sort of like a day-to-day basis? When you hear the word scaling, a lot of people would imagine doing more pilots, more tools, more projects, and that's true. But it doesn't have to work that way, because people also hear scaling and they hear, budget. And that's always a sore point for nonprofits. But within a non-profit, scaling doesn't have to be about quantity. Clearly is, if that's what you want. But actually, what it's really about is maturity. It's about creating an environment where AI isn't just a special one-off project. It's just how AI gets done. That culture of AI first is what you're aiming for. But that only happens when everyone feels psychologically safe to use it every day, because your governance team have come in and said, right, here's this structure, follow this. Do what you want with AI.
That's it. Something I'm seeing a lot in places where AI is working really well is it doesn't feel flashy. If it was normal, people would just use it to write notes or summarize the emails they missed from the last 2 meetings, or tidy up reports, or get rid of a load of admin burden. And it's not made a huge deal out of, and obviously the wins are celebrated, but it's part of the workflow. I think is the important thing.
Who comes in on a Monday morning to a huge inbox full of 30 or 40 emails? Just a quick thumbs up or a wave in the chat. But we built a quick tool last month. We're actually building another one at the moment, and actually there's really not all that much work involved in it, because the bare bones of it were built within an hour. But it will, when you open Outlook and you've got an email sat in your inbox, there is an AI generated response to that email from context. It won't send unless you say it, but you can then basically look at the response, quickly edit it, or just quick send. Can you imagine how much quicker your time can be if you've got 30 emails with a response waiting to send to every single one? And that's the normality of what we're aiming for, because we're all creatures of habit. If something is starting to feel inconsistent, or if it's it's bursting ahead here but it's really slow there, nobody's going to use it. Everyone feels avoided. But actually, if AI just becomes your default answer to most things, and you've got that groundwork of governance to back you up, it comes as natural as opening Outlook in the morning.
Yeah, that's it. And that's when things, you start noticing they take off, because people start feeling confident, and then you see the knock-on benefits, like your reporting gets a little better, and there's fewer bottlenecks, and there's more consistent standardized outputs, and then that means the leaders finally get the visibility and the control and the quality they've been asking for so long.
It's that point where it's going to stop feeling like an experiment, and it needs to feel embedded. The word we're probably looking for is it needs to feel a little bit more official, a little bit more, I'm desperately trying to avoid the B word, of boring, but it needs to feel like leadership has sort of approved it. Governance that doesn't terrify people or make it feel like a chore, so your staff feel confident enough to use it without having to second guess themselves.
One thing I think as well, if you put some governance in place and like I said earlier, pick the people who are more advanced, and you almost select them to help you govern it and structure it. That, I think, is how you go from someone who is using it in isolation without telling anyone to that is the driver for your organization and their adoption of AI. They know what's possible more than anyone else. So yeah, once you reach that point, growth becomes self-reinforcing, because other people like that, you'll identify other people like that. The more the knowledge spreads, other teams copy successful patterns, adoption spreads a lot by itself without needing pushing and enforcing. So it becomes more sustainable as time goes on.
Absolutely. So I did promise you sort of like actual practical steps. So what does the basics of scaling look like? And at its simplest level, it's clearly not this simple, but at its simplest level, scaling AI is going to come back to 3 things: your people, your processes, and your data. Now, you can add as many layers of complexity on top of that as you want, but in the end, you're always going to circle back to these 3.
And these are not, what's important is they're not 3 separate just boxes to tick.
That's why I've got it in a circle.
Constantly feeding into each other. So people don't feel confident, processes aren't followed, processes aren't clear, data gets messy, AI then becomes unreliable because it can't use the data it feeds from.
Stable and predictable are horrible words, circling back to the B word again, but they're also what people crave in their heart of hearts. Most of us aren't risk-seeking, danger adventurous. We like stable and predictable, and that's what this loop creates: stability. When your processes, your people, and your data are all supporting each other, it's not a gamble anymore. It's just routine, which is another horrible word, but it's what people want in their day-to-day.
But then at that point, instead of every team reinventing their own way of working with AI and having to start from the ground up every time, they build the skills and follow the same rules from the work that everyone's done, and it's the same trusted data, and it keeps everything aligned, so makes scaling easier again.
True. But we're not done there. The next couple of slides, we're going to go through over these individually for you, just to really sort of double down on this. So your people. When organizations talk about scaling AI, as I've pointed out at the start of this, they jump straight to the technology. Please, please, please do not miss this step. Your biggest lever is your people. AI can't scale if you put in this great big expensive tool that nobody uses or nobody's been told how to use. It scales when your people want to use it. And it's that one word that is important with that first step. And that normally means involving them on the process.
And that can help them feel safe doing so as well, if you recognise that want and give them the right level of involvement. And we see that play out a lot. Staff want the tools to make their lives easier, obviously. They want fewer admin tasks or repetitive jobs, but when they feel unsure about quality or risk or expectations, they freeze up.
Uncertainty is the enemy of adoption to any project. If people don't, and we talk about hearts and minds all the time, most digital transformations that we work on don't fail because of the technology. They fail because Kevin in accounts just keeps using Excel because he didn't like the new system. He was uncertain of it. He was nervous about it. If your people don't know what's allowed or what's risky or how to use what you've put in place, their default is going to be to do nothing and to continue with what's familiar. AI can't feel like extra work. It needs to feel like less work. So let them move on to the more impactful stuff that helps your mission.
Yeah, and you can remove a lot of that burden by just having some sort of simple, practical, standard guidance or advice for them when using AI, like what's okay to use it for, what still needs human judgment to evaluate, what does good look like in your organization. An idea I had a little before this webinar, just preparing for it, was like something as simple as a kind of Copilot agent for onboarding new staff or new team members. Get it to regurgitate the same kind of intro every time. This is your organization's AI policy at a glance. This is the stuff I'm really good for. This is the stuff you probably shouldn't use me for. And even just stuff like that will just spark off ideas in people's heads to try stuff.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely kicking myself now, Steve, because I put all these slides together, and human judgment is a great one to include that I completely forgot, because actually your governance should absolutely say, right, well, this is where AI comes in. This is absolutely 10,000% where I need some human judgment to check it. And different organizations will have different levels of appetite for where that level comes in. But that's a great point there. But yeah, to go back to your point, when people feel confident, AI won't feel like a disruption to their work anymore. It won't feel new. It won't even feel like a tool. It's just something that gets them through their day with less friction. It becomes a natural part of that routine. Which, again, is a bad word, but it's that word that everybody wants within their day-to-day.
But I know I keep saying it, but it spreads quickly at that point. But I think quicker than you would expect in many situations, because obviously AI, we've seen how quickly that's become so widespread, but it also is a bit of an accelerant to helping you figure out what's working and how to take the next steps. Like, instead of, after using an AI Copilot for a week, instead of you sitting down and writing all the good things that you thought, all the bad things that you thought, get it to do it for you, get it to write that report for you. So it can help you scale it out quicker, and then you start becoming almost like AI minded in the way that you actually think about, okay, like how can we be creative and leverage all the different qualities that it has to actually advance our project and our governance and our use cases.
Which is why we say people need to sit at the top of this, but they're not just the only part of it. Let's go moving on to processes, and I want to be very, very clear here because I work in a creative marketing department and I hate bureaucracy. I am not talking about bureaucracy, or I can't even pronounce the word properly. I am not talking about admin. The goal here isn't to create red tape. No governance ever should just create red tape for the sake of it. It's to remove ambiguity. It's not adding stuff, it's removing it. And in this case, we're removing the unknown. It's where the unknown is where anxiety lives. Nobody is scared about something they can see. They're scared. If you think of all the best horror movies you've ever seen, you're not scared of the monster once you know what it is. You're scared of the monster that you can't see. And that's what good governance should do. It should remove that anxiety to stop people using AI and actually empower them to do it.
Yeah, there's a bit of a perfect harmony there, because if people don't know the rules, then they either hold back or rush ahead, neither of which are good. And
Yeah.
obviously, clear processes give people that safe middle ground, because they'll then know what's acceptable, what needs sign off, and where are the boundaries. But yeah, kind of over engineering a set of rules that allow don't restrict people's creativity, especially with something like this, is equally bad. So kind of set of principles to follow by, outcomes, objectives, and processes off the back of those, great, but don't kind of lock it down too much so that people aren't free to experiment a little bit. And that's, I think, important to pick some use cases maybe that aren't externally affecting. Like, your first AI project should not be a donor facing first line chatbot that answers all their incoming incident queries. It should be that Microsoft 365 Copilot that allows the managers, after 5 hours of back-to-back meetings, to just summarize their 4 most important emails for the day so they can action them straight away.
To go back to my horror movie sort of reference, your processes, they almost tell people how to behave, and they tell them, this is okay to do, this isn't okay to do. So, in the haunted mansion, it's absolutely okay to run out of the front door. It is not okay to hide under the bed because you are going to get caught. And that's kind of where your governance should create. It's that framework of confidence where people can go, right, I've got no doubt now. I get this. I feel a little bit pushed, but I'm being pushed in the right direction. And that makes me feel warm and secure and fuzzy.
And I like when you feel warm and secure and fuzzy, James, because I'm very happy.
Thank you, Steve.
But yeah, the important bit there is just, there are many important bits there, but one of is that the good process actually speeds things up and doesn't slow them down. So simplify the workflows. If you need approvals for stuff, you don't need 3, have 1 approver. So it's just little things like that, the clear, consistent ways of handling AI generated content, so teams stop reinventing the wheel. People will stop, second guessing and go for it a bit more.
Red tape bad, confidence in your people good. To summarize this slide up sort of nicely, I think. But we need to get slightly technical on the data as well. And this is the bit where some people either go, oh, this is the bit I'm really excited about, or they groan and go, oh, this is super technical. Doesn't have to be, though. If your people and processes set the culture for your AI, your data is the thing that's going to determine whether any of it is actually any good. You can have your team feeling all warm and fuzzy and cozy. You miss this step, they've got nothing to work on, and it's a bit more complicated than dumping everything in SharePoint, unfortunately. But again, there is still with your data, there's a behavioral angle. Can't help myself, I work in marketing with people. People trust tools when the information they produce feels consistent, predictable, and sensible. Nothing will make somebody angrier at AI and actually have them go around the office bad-mouthing AI is when it repeatedly gives them wrong answers. Bad data destroys trust instantly.
Yeah, that's very topical for me, actually, because I'm speaking to a few organizations that have run into trouble with this sort of thing. They'll run a good pilot, and it will be pulling from a local, data from a local spreadsheet or a isolated database. Works great. Proves the proof of concept and validates the use case, but then it falls apart when they try and scale it because they haven't got that central big database for all of the charities' information and everything like that. So a thing you could do, I would encourage everyone to do this right now, like regardless of whether they use AI, is just have somewhere, whether it's a SharePoint repository or whatever, just start feeding all of like your organizational standards and practices and do's and don'ts into it, and your kind of ways of working and all that sort of stuff. And then that will always build up over time. But at least when you started doing that for a while, that's some good initial training grounds for the the AI model.
And we have 3 or 4 videos on how to prepare your data. So I'm not going to dive into the technical stuff right here, right now, because I don't know where you all are on your journey. But confirmation bias plays a huge part in this. I guarantee everyone will forget the 400 absolutely amazing AI answers that has been generated, but they'll go around telling everybody about the one time it went wrong. And that's absolutely what good data should be avoided, that confirmation bias with the naysayers in the organization.
Yeah, so there's a few Microsoft tools that can help you do that, and that's something that I can give you a bit of guidance on anyone who wants it after the call. But whether it's something like Dataverse or Fabric or Purview, the goal is the same, and it's having one reliable source of truth. So everyone pulls from the same data, and you're getting consistent answers and responses instead of contradictory ones or ones without the correct information.
And there's the word we wanted: consistency. It builds trust, it builds confidence, and it's what drives adoption. So although your data might feel like the most technical part of this sort of loop that we're discussing, part of scaling AI is actually the biggest determinant of whether people are going to believe in the system. Not AI, part of the data is whether people are going to trust it or not.
And obviously that belief is crucial. And if staff know that their data is accurate and well governed, they're going to be more willing to rely on AI to do everything: analyze documents, generate insights. Becomes a tool that they can lean on rather than something they have to double check every 5 minutes. And this is something like for fundraisers, who often many have a very personal relationship with either their individual donors or their corporate donors. If something has a risk of presenting the wrong information, or there's no way they're going to be sending that to their donors that they've built up these relationships with. So the trust is huge.
And it probably feels like we've been talking about trust and confidence a lot, but it's so important with scaling, because when you're scaling, it's not about extending your pilots. It's not about going, okay, well, I'm going to add 2 or 3 new tools. That's not scaling. That's just adding 2 or 3 new use cases. This is about implementing a AI first culture, and that's why the hearts and minds of your staff and volunteers are so important. But you touched on a point there, Steve, about unified data, and you mentioned Dataverse, Fabric, and Purview. Now, I absolutely know what all 3 of those are, but I'm going to pretend I don't and put you on the spot. What's DataView, Fabric, and Purview, Steve?
So Dataverse is probably the one that many of us are familiar with.
I can't even pronounce it right.
It's essentially just the data layer that sits under your apps, like your Microsoft 365 apps and your Dynamics 365 apps and your Power Platform. So if everyone uses a combination of those, you'll probably know what Dataverse is. It's just a kind of fairly traditionally database. Fabric is when you kind of want to pull a lot of data from not just Microsoft systems, but for all manner of third-party systems, like perhaps Razor's Edge, you have Sage or Xero or whatever, and you want to be able to report on all of that data at once in a view that combines it. Fabric is really good, and then Power BI obviously on top of that. It's kind of part of Fabric nowadays. And then Purview is actually, I went to a Microsoft AI tour earlier in the year and saw a really good use case, really good thing about Purview when used in relation to Copilot. So that's slightly less in my world because that's more sort of security based. But one thing that Copilot's got nowadays is, so in Purview, it's got a document sort of confidentiality checker where, say you've got a shared document and you're working on it. As soon as, say, you enter a credit card number into that document, the access permissions automatically go up a level because Copilot in Purview has detected it, preventing data loss and stuff like that. So actually all these things in combination are fantastic, but just pick something you're familiar with, or again, ask us if you just want some advice, like what is this stuff? Do I already have it in many cases? And what more could I be getting out of it?
I didn't know Purview could do that. Can I have your credit code number to just test that live here, Steve? I think everybody wants to see that, right?
I'm sure.
Thumbs up who wants to see that with Steve's credit card.
I don't think we've got time for a live demo, James, unfortunately, today.
Next time. But it does sound like without these tools, what we're back to is fragmentation of data. And that fragmentation of data, unfortunately, guys, I'm going to start talking about human behavior and psychology again. That fragmentation is going to lead to unpredictability. Unpredictability leads to your staff and volunteers feeling unsafe. And that's where scaling slows down and stops, right? If something's feeling random, even once, we are just going to go, I've touched the fire and it's hot. I'm not going to touch it again. And it sounds like these are where these are the tools that stop that happening, Steve?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And just, I think, add to the level of consistency to using these tools, and obviously from a security perspective, but also just where it's pulling from and how quickly you could access the data and everything like that. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that kind of just standardizing your data and where you put it can feed out into many other positives.
And the nice thing about a single source of the truth, so Dataverse and Fabric and Purview all working together, is it doesn't just make your data better, it actually will change your staff's behavior as well. They can stop second guessing the answers. Your leadership teams can feel more comfortable about making decisions based on it, and everyone just feels, and I really feel like this is turning into a mental health session, but everyone feels safer about using AI because they know it's a safe space. They know, they trust the technology, and they know the information behind it is being governed properly. And that's key.
Yeah, because obviously there's one side feeling safe experimenting with AI, but then there's another side feeling like safe and the fact that it's trustworthy.
Yes.
If you can, that's I think a big thing is it goes from people seeing it as a novelty to actually being part of their workflow and daily lives. For a long time when ChatGPT came out, I saw it just as pure novelty, and then I started using it for a bit and realized, actually, hang on, how did I ever work without this before?
Agreed. So unified data is important for two reasons, then quickly summarizing and then moving on. Yes, it improves the quality of AI, but more importantly, it improves the credibility of AI. And that's what you need for your scaling, right? Credibility. So empowering your staff and volunteers. Now, I mean, we've sort of touched on this pretty much right through this entire sort of presentation. It's what, it's what scaling is really all about, but it's easy to slip too far into conversations about platforms and governance and strategy. You've got to play the part that actually changes people's day-to-day experiences. That's your staff and volunteers' day-to-day experiences, unfortunately, not yours. If AI isn't making, so not just their confidence now, but the governance you put in place needs to be making their lives easier. Nothing else matters. Your AI needs to make their lives easier, or they're not going to use it. So you can come in and put in a load of sort of scaling AI that goes, right, this is going to make my staff feel safer, more secure, they can trust it. If it's not also ticking that box about giving them more time away from the repetitive stuff to work on the mission, your governance has failed, unfortunately.
You can see it as well. Like someone tries like uses Copilot to summarize their notes or like pick up their priority emails after not being on Outlook for ages. You can see like in their face the relief. Like, this saves me 20 minutes, and this is repeatable, saving me. And it's huge. That sort of thing is what turns AI from an abstract idea into something genuine. And a point with this, I think, is that sort of initial use case of AI that people often have the free license for Copilot, just saving a bit of time here and there. Track that, because that people aren't tracking how much time this stuff is saving a lot of the time. And that is your initial return on investment, and that is your business case for future time-saving AI initiatives. So, like, ask your users, how much time do you reckon you're saving a week? Write it all down. Work out how much they're saving you money-wise, how much you're paying them versus how much time they're getting back.
I mean, you factor in your volunteers as well there. They don't even get paid, and that's kind of what you're looking for, is that, phew, this is taking some pressure off me movement. And that's where the scalable shift in mindset comes. It's not a threat anymore, and it's not unpredictable. It's a regular, reliable tool, cuts through admin and gives more time to focus on the parts of the role that actually matter, and reminds people of the reason they came to work for a nonprofit in the first place. We did one, was it 3 months ago, about how to prevent burnout with AI, and actually it's probably a really good one to sort of circle back to once you've watched this. But a lot of the roles within a nonprofit, they're under constant pressure. Get your governance right though, and that pressure just dials down a bit.
Yeah, but then with this sort of empowerment thing, once you empower people, then obviously the momentum spreads, but also the return on investment spreads. Like, everyone is suddenly saving X amount of time per week, and that becomes exponential. So the benefits are exponential if you do all these things.
Yeah, and I don't know, there's just something quite uniquely human about all this, dragging it back from AI. Your people are feeling supported. It actually improves the organization's culture. People are starting to take smaller risks. They're trying new things, and that behavior is what scales the AI. It's not a great big strategy document. It's about people going, yep, I got this, and I'm ready to sort of like take the next step and the next step and the next step because my foundations are there to support me.
Yeah, but then these are the tasks that staff are already experimenting with. We see volunteers benefit a lot because they juggle a lot of tasks around their job, family, commitments. So yeah, anything that reduces admin or helps them record information more clearly or just source verifiable information or standardized information, huge, because it frees up the emotional space and they feel a bit more. That's a huge factor, obviously, with this sort of stuff as well.
So, and this is the big question on practicality, where should you be using the AI? When we ask organizations where they think AI fits, they'll often jump straight into the big strategic ideas. Oh, can you help me with fundraising? Can it optimize my programs? Can it transform my organization? And we often sort of ask, transform it into what? And yeah, the question is eventually it can. But the real value is going to need to start small with your everyday time-saving tasks. The things that people are going to repeat 10, 20, 50 times a week. Behaviorally, those are the easiest places to adopt AI because the impact is immediate to your volunteers and staff. It's visible.
That's it. And then everyone starts seeing that when you become more consistent in your use of AI for these common tasks or these quality of notes or summaries or how communication then improves across the whole organization, leaders will get clearer information, communicate better with teams, volunteers and users feel more supported, and it's a kind of cyclical loop, isn't it, I guess? So I think that's a kind of way to visualize some of these things, is just like consistency, momentum. It all spreads out and positively influences all the other facets of delivering these projects.
Yeah, if somebody can save 5 minutes today, they're much more likely to spend 10 minutes on it tomorrow. If they have to spend 10 minutes on it today, they're going to push back if you ask them to spend 2-3 minutes on it the next day. So where does Copilot take you? Because obviously we're a Microsoft partner, proud to be a Microsoft partner, and we think the technology is absolutely fantastic. So where does Copilot go next? And one of the biggest misconceptions we find about AI in general is that what we see today is the finished product. And I mentioned continuous improvement as a big part of what we do at the start of this call, because AI isn't finished. We are just at the very beginning of a curve that's about to get far more personalized, far more contextual, and far more, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for here is, exponentially curved. We are at the very dip of something that's about to do this. And it's just got to be embedded in your day-to-day, or you are going to have a lot of catch-up work to do down the road.
But the nice thing is that the exponential curve you described about AI's advancements itself as a product, that's the same exponential curve that you'll have when you start using AI, and it spreads around naturally.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it's obviously not being behind the curve is very important, but equally you'll be surprised, I think, with how quickly your use and how well you use it starts to spread and grow arms and legs everywhere.
Yeah, you're almost looking for what's called role-specific intelligence. It's kind of saying, look, it's not saying here's AI as a thing, good luck. It's about going, here, HR, here's this Copilot agent that does this, that's designed for your world. Hey, fundraising people, here's some fundraising skills that Copilot can do for you. Hey, senior leadership team, here's these AI reports that are really useful for you. It's that contextual, individualized stuff that Copilot is absolutely more fantastic is absolutely great at, because ChatGPT tends to be this great big wide broad thing, and one of Copilot's criticisms is often it's broken up. There's an Excel Copilot, and there's a Word Copilot, there's a PowerPoint Copilot, there's a Dynamics Copilot, but actually that's its strength, because you can make this laser focused at people, which is why we recommend Copilot so much. So governance without fear. Governance, it's always going to be one of those words that make people tense up. It's strict, it's slow, it's full of forms. When it comes to AI, though, good governance isn't about control. It's, as I've said, it's about confidence, right?
Yeah, that's it. And then that's when people feel supported and confident rather than policed. They'll just use AI so much better, both subconsciously and consciously. Check things through more thoughtfully, follow the process because the process makes sense, rather than just following process for process sake and constantly wondering whether a workaround would be better. And this is all just how AI becomes safer and not risky as adoption grows. It's just as much about the actual governance right in front of your face as it is the undertones that good governance and bad governance creates.
But that's one of the big governance misunderstandings with AI. It shouldn't be slowing anything down. It should be clear and simple, and it should be there to speed things up, just to stop staff guessing. Managers can stop worrying, and leaders, most importantly for everyone on this call, can stop firefighting. So what will it look like? We've talked about it in the generic. What does it look like specifically? And I'm assuming nobody here is going to want a 60-page policy document that they send out to all their staff to read, and actually you just get a tick box going, yeah, I've read this. Somebody's back might be covered, but it's not really good governance. Good governance should be simple, human, and usable. It should set the expectations in a way that is going to reduce that anxiety and complexity and provide clarity. And it's clarity that you want with AI governance.
Suggestion for how to use an AI tool to help you improve a governance policy as well is use personas. There's something you taught me quite early, I think, James, in my AI use, is that ask it. I'm trying to write a thorough but not a hugely wordy governance policy. Please take on the persona of my charity's governance manager or whatever the type of role, kind of, if you want to direct it towards users, if they're trying to make it easier for them to digest, take on
Context.
the persona of the recipient that you want, tell it to take on the persona, and then ask it, review this draft, come back with a load of suggestions or criticisms based on stuff I have or haven't included or stuff that I should change, and then please redraft the governance policy for me based on all your advice from the persona you've taken on, and it can help you improve all this stuff itself. It literally helps with everything. So these sort of take some of these principles forward.
And for anybody that's quickly sort of like scribbling down notes, the next step you want to take is what's known as your ethical guardrails. So the principles that guide how AI should be used. There I'm talking transparency, fairness, dignity, safeguarding. They all may seem quite high level, but they all need discussing and baking in. They're not legal tick boxes, they're cultural signals, which is actually more important with non-profits than probably any other organization. They're there to tell your team, this is the kind of organization we are. And actually, it's the bit of governance that a lot of people don't actually sort of often consider, but governance guides culture and actually goes, look, this is a great place to work.
And it works really well, I think, governance when organizations treat it as something maybe like fluid or almost alive, that it's reviewed every few months. Things are always changing, especially AI, obviously. So take in feedback from teams, adjust if necessary based on what's happening in reality.
It's not a once and done. So roadmap to scaling. When you do want to start scaling, it's not this huge dramatic transformation. It's actually surprisingly easy. It's, as we've said, it's about building that momentum and taking a series of small, sensible steps where you assess, align, unify, put in your guardrails, and then check it all and rinse, repeat. You take those small, sensible steps that are just going to compound over time, that increase clarity and reduce anxiety.
And that's why just having a simple roadmap makes a huge difference. You're not going to have a 50-page strategy. You just need to know what steps you take, what to do first, when to move on to the next one. And when you're following a clear path, it stops feeling chaotic and suddenly starts becoming much more achievable. And that's something we've been working with a lot of charities to do lately, is create an informal or formal roadmap, whatever. So if that's something that you've maybe not done before or haven't done in the context of AI, I can certainly help you just at least figure out what the steps are to create a bit of a roadmap for you personally and what works for you.
And it's not just the roadmap, although that is vitally important. You need two. You need a roadmap and then you need a playbook. Weird, there's a slide. So actually, there's almost like an American football metaphor here, but isn't there, with their sort of playbook? But quite often a lot of organizations will come to us and say, do you have a playbook we can follow? And 99.999% I'll go, Steve! And Steve will then get in touch with people and share with them. And it's a great question, because when something feels unfamiliar, people are instinctively going to want that pattern, that somebody's done this before. And Steve's done this before for many organizations and is happy to help. Steve, what does your playbook focus on?
So the core principles of it are that it's not got to be a massive, thick manual. It's just a few key rules that are really clear. So start small, and the benefits of that are you make failing not a bad thing. Start small so that the impacts and negative impacts are non-existent or very, very small. But yeah, and it also means that people are then more just empowered to go for it and think creatively. So just have to start small, grow from there, build repeatable patterns. So again, you save time after building the foundations of all these things.
Share early wins with the team, just because that's going to build your momentum, and then support them as they scale, not as they launch. Ask yourself, it's okay, well, this is now starting to scale. What extra do I need to do? And then once you've got that level in, we come back to training continuously and looping back to starting small. So it's start small at this level, go through the playbook and the loop, and then start small at this level again. So we're still going to start with low risk use cases, but on a different level as you move up through that pattern. What to avoid, also a great big one. So it's just as important what not to do. A lot of the challenges organizations face, they're not caused by AI itself, they're caused by perfectly well-intentioned decisions that create friction later, and nothing will kill momentum rather than sort of like, oops, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, one of the bigger things that we see, bigger pitfalls, is that an organization's running too many pilots. Because it feels productive, but your efforts are scattered. You're probably duplicating work. So one of the conversations we're having with a charity at the moment, who I think are doing it in a really good way, is they're picking a group of 10 super users, and they're actually helping us explore with them the use cases they should start with. And I think that's something that, as a Microsoft expert, we're well placed to almost give the ideas to the charity and also work with their ideas based on their ways of working and processes. So I would definitely advise that get an expert to help you come up with a strategy for your pilots, so you're not doing them disconnected. And even if you're doing multiple, manage them cohesively.
Yeah, and that's actually because managing is obviously a big part, but before you even start them, it's right, what do we want to achieve? Most of the stuff that we see failing is because there's no shared vision of what good actually looks like. When everyone's got a different interpretation of what AI is for, you're then going to have 10 competing pilots with 10 different approaches. So you actually need to take that step back and go, right, this is what it looks like before we even get started.
And then another common pitfall is teams get left behind when champions shoot ahead, who are chomping at the bit to use AI because they're very knowledgeable about it, and everyone else stays where they are. So that gap is an important one to watch.
So let's finish with a question everyone ultimately care about. What is success going to look like? It's easy to get swept up by the hype or the pressure or I've got to do this, but real success should just be more grounded than that and more human.
Yeah, and the first sign of success we see in organizations is when AI just shows up in everyday work, not in like special projects or cases, and staff and volunteers quietly use it to save time and do all the great stuff that it can do. So no one makes a huge deal out of it, just becomes normal.
And as my notes say, your teams feel confident, supported, they're clear on how to use it, the data that it's producing is trusted. And this is the most important bit, the impact that AI is generating becomes visible, measurable, and aligned with your mission. I think for me, that penultimate step is the most important one.
Totally agree.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I apologize for us taking sort of like an additional 7 minutes there, but you can follow Foremost Pro on LinkedIn, or you can reach out directly to me or Steve. There's a QR code there. We'll send these slides out with the video. We're just going to pause now to the people that sort of like were very patient and say, look, if you've got any questions, me and Steve are going to hang around, drop them in the chat. If not, we'll email you all out and Steve can follow up.
Yeah, also if it's just if some of this stuff resonated with you and you want to have a chat another time, it doesn't have to be we've got a project for you type of chat. If you just want a bit of advice or guidance, like for 20 minutes, just let me know. I'm always happy to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he's weirdly nice like that. It's been a very informative session. I would value a chat on how I can put some governance in place. There you go. So thank you for that. And I've got your contact details from when you signed up, so I will make sure Steve reaches out. How's in the next 3 minutes for you? He's probably not that keen, don't worry, but I'll make sure we drop you a line. Although
Yeah.
he's typing again, so let's see
You
if
might
he's
have
free for a call
overcommitted
now.
me, James, because I've actually got a meeting. But but no, Mark,
Right.
when I'm at my meetings and stuff, I'll drop you an email for that.
Excellent. Right, I'm going to end this call then. So thank you all for joining, and we will speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Cheers all. See you later.